What is our highest potential? What is the question you're seeking to answer? What is that continual drive within you that you are always being inspired in the direction of answering a particular question? And for me, it was, what is our highest potential? It's not about finding heaven sometime after you leave here. It's about being able to create your own heaven on earth in your own life and bringing heaven to earth in the way that you live, in the way that you treat others, in the way that you show up. You're here on a quest. And I think at this time where we're at is this deep desire for freedom. The freedom to be who we really are.
All right, we're here with Sara Landon.
Hi, Ruben.
Hi. In your backyard. What an amazing backyard.
Thank you.
How long have you been in this place?
I've been in this area for a few years now, in this home for a couple of years, so it's my version of heaven on earth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's super cool. Super
Yeah.
cool. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
We're happy to have you.
So you're a channel.
Yes?
What else would you, what other titles could you claim, I should say?
Well, I'm a recovering corporate executive and entrepreneur.
All right.
Came from the business world as a corporate professional.
Mm-hmm.
And never, if anyone would have told me that I was going to end up being channeling and doing this work, would I have ever thought that that was my path. But I am so blessed and grateful that it is.
In the corporate world, what exactly were you doing? Or if you don't mind saying,
So I was
recovering.
in technology world. I was in sales, strategy, vision, work, which, actually is part of something that you can take into any and all professions. But I started off, actually, we were talking about it before we started shooting, in some influence in spirituality very, very young. But as I got into my teenage years and I actually started working in my family's restaurant really young, I got very into personal development and more the art and science of achievement and success. And I thought that's what you do in life. You go to school and you get a good job and you buy a house and you live happily ever after. And so very early on, I started studying like Napoleon Hill and Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy and Jack Canfield and all these incredible personal development teachers. And that kind of said, no matter what your circumstances or conditions, anything's really possible for you if you work hard and take massive action and have really clear goals, right? And so I did that, and it worked. And I went through the corporate world and in achieving over time all of the goals that I had, and I found myself at one point in time having achieved exactly what I thought was the biggest possible dream for me in my life. And yet inside I knew I wasn't really living my deeper purpose and was looking for greater meaning and fulfillment in my life, although I didn't know what that meant. I struggled with understanding what I believed about God and spirit. And in a short period of time, I think when you knock on the door, it eventually gets answered. When you start to seek, your world begins to open up. And I think I found that in that journey, doesn't matter how far you travel or what journey you go on, it always just leads back to you. So if you're not happy with what's going on within you and feeling the love and joy and peace within you, it's very hard to find it in the world around you. So this work ultimately has been my greatest teaching and returning to that truth within myself. And I remember the council saying early on that if you will just live this wisdom, you will live a life beyond your wildest dreams. And I said, well, you don't really get it, because I have these really, big dreams. But fast forward many years now, I can absolutely say I get what they meant, because through channeling the council and practicing their wisdom and living their wisdom and teaching their wisdom, I really do feel like we live in a wonderful world at a wonderful time. Never been a better time to be here. And I know so many people are going through that journey of going from the life they thought would make them happy, not really knowing what's out there or what their purpose really is. But if you will open that door and ask the questions, the answers will come. And there is so much love and peace and joy and harmony in this world if you'll really open your heart and allow it. And that's the basis of all of the council's teachings.
Who is the council?
I have no idea.
Okay, all right, good answer.
Which also goes along with, at some point in time, someone said, you know, when did you decide you wanted to start channeling and doing this work? And I said, I still haven't decided if I want to do it. I'm just doing it. I can't not do it.
Right,
you know,
right.
it's
So
greater calling.
How did it start for you then?
Yeah, well, to answer your question quickly on the council, so they are a consciousness with a much greater perspective of who we are and why we are here and what we intended when we chose this life experience. And when I get in a state to receive them, it's really about getting myself out of the way and just opening up to the energy and allowing them to come through. My consciousness sort of mixes with theirs or steps to the side, and a higher state of consciousness and awareness streams through. They don't really need to be labeled. They don't really need a name. And they have said always that even to label them with any name, just as yourself, even to call yourself Reuben,
it's limiting,
or an actor or filmmaker or any of these things, we automatically begin to limit all that we are. And the basis of all of their work is living your highest potential and what's really possible beyond all of this limitation that we believe in and agree to live in, even though we don't have to.
How did you come up with the name for them, or did you name them, or where did the name the council come from? Because it's, even though it's limiting, it still has some reference.
Very early on when I started channeling, my experience of it was that my voice was really loud and they talked through me very quickly. I sounded to myself like a Russian man, which was very uncomfortable. And so for a long time I called it the voice. And it was just a voice and that would speak through me. And yet when I really tuned into it, I was aware that it was not just a singular being. They always spoke as we. And I knew that they were a collective of beings. Oftentimes they would say, we are those most interested in this conversation here. They are the higher selves of everyone here present that will ever listen to this. I do believe that they have, at times, it's certain particular collectives. And
so you feel the energy shifting from time to time?
I do. Sometimes it's a much more expansive, and I feel that there may be more specific groups that are coming in at that particular period of time. And so when I started calling them the council, or when I really identified, it's more like a council of beings. And I saw them one particular time when I was doing a channel. I went, like I was going up this staircase, and I walked into this room with these beings that were just the most beautiful beings I had ever seen, and they were sitting around a round table. And I walked up and there was a chair, and I took my seat at the council, and that's really when I knew the name was the council. And that was for many years when I started channeling. The experience I had as I would go up sort of to this place where I would take my seat at the council, and with these incredibly amazing beings of light, and then they would start speaking through.
And you saw that in like a meditation and visually you would see this?
Yeah,
this
so when I go into channel, and this has evolved over the years, I always say to people that channel or just beginning or having certain experiences, we all have a very unique perspective and experience, and it expands over time, or for many people becomes more easy over time. More you do it, the easier it gets. And so for me, when I first started, it took me about 15 minutes to actually get into a channeled state where the counsel would come through, and now it's just a couple of breaths, and I can do it for 6 or 8 hours a day. So for a while, when I was beginning to first channel, I would do that visualization process for myself in order to get into a channeled state.
What's a typical day of Sara Landon? What do you have for breakfast? What do you channel first thing in the morning, or how do you?
Good question.
How does that work? Walk us through a day.
I wake up at a pretty natural time. Whenever I wake up, I very rarely have an alarm clock, and if I do need to wake up for a particular thing, I often wake up a minute or two before. And I think our minds have that awareness to gently, peacefully awaken us each morning. And the first thing I do in the morning, I just take a little time to simmer. I just sort of allow myself, if there's something that came in a dream that I look at, I just allow myself to simmer. I think the thing about dreams is that it will show you what's still active in your consciousness, even if it makes no flipping sense.
Sure.
It'll show you what's still kind of going on, unresolved in your consciousness. So I think for me, that space of just simmering a bit and what did I dream about? Then I get up and I take care of my lovely animals, who are my joy, my dog and my cat, and that just brings me so much joy. I usually come outside and just look at the sunrise and the trees and the colors and the beauty. And then I go work out. Either yoga, but more often I run. I love to run, I love to walk, I love to move my body. I feel like for me, that's a way I kind of move stagnant energy out of my body. I think that's a really healthy practice, however that feels good to you. And I have a wonderful place here where I live, that I have just this incredible community of people that I love to see every single morning. And that is as much of my work as this is, and none of it's work, but showing up and smiling and connecting. That part of it, to me, we get so focused on my work is my channeling clients or my courses or my masterclass program, and yet that is as important to me, to show up and be present and open and allow. You begin to be able to stretch time and space so that you're always where you need to be when you need to be there, but giving yourself that permission to just be. So I make as much time as I can for just being. And I'm not a breakfast person. It's funny. So I got into the whole intermittent eating thing. Or it's supposed to be fasting. I like eating better.
Intermittent eating. I like
that.
Yeah.
I usually have lunch sitting out on the patio there that you all were at earlier, and enjoy lunch with my animals and my place. And then I do my work in the afternoon, which also was part of my perfect day. I find that I channel the counsels so much each day that is my meditation. What I make time for is to be out in nature, just seeing things. I feel like guidance almost always comes to me in nature. I go deeper into the teachings. So either walking on the beach or walking in the hills here is just a wonderful thing. And I'm a really good sleeper. I like to go to bed probably about 10, and I like to sleep. So ultimately, it's creating a life that you love every day.
So who would you say is sort of your demographic? People who come to gravitate to this material, to your material. I sort of have a very cosmic vibe with my energy and what I'm putting out there with the interview with Ed. Do you have the alien believers and the cosmic people, or is it a little bit different audience?
I know there's definitely people in my audience that are interested in that or study that. It's not something that we talk about much in my work, and I don't find it's a lot of people that ask questions about that in my particular work. I think there's not many that would acknowledge that there's definitely so much more going on here, but not so much the alien, UFO, cosmic, although they're always welcome if it resonates with them. I think it's a wonderful conversation. But for me, it's really people that are wanting to understand what their purpose is. Why are they here in this life experience? What is their purpose? what's really going on here. How do they live a more meaningful, purposeful life? And how do they make a greater impact on the world? And from the most limitless perspective, beyond all the limitation that we learn here in this human experience of, prejudice, stress, worry, separation by either religion or belief system or hierarchy, even the whole sort of former way of being in a guru type setting where the teacher's up here and everybody else is down there.
Or church type situations.
Yes, exactly. And, I'm not against any religion at all. Surprisingly, and to me, there are people in all sorts of different religions that follow the work of the council and my work, but they have chosen to stay in their communities and their family dynamics because they know they can be way showers there. They know they can be the example of this work and really live from an open heart no matter where they are. So oftentimes they choose to stay in those types of situations. Same with corporate people who have been entrepreneurs or in the business world. Very similar to where I was. I compartmentalized my life. I had my corporate life and my business, which was 99% of my life. But anytime I had a spare moment, I was reading a spiritual book or something about spiritual growth or enlightenment, and that was my passion and my hobby and my joy. And so it's often people that are looking for answers. For me, I kept asking this question is, what is our highest potential? If you think of your life, not so much as something you're here to learn, or you're not here to save the world, you're not here to right some wrong from the past, but you're here on a quest. And it can be wonderful, it can be joyous, it can be easy and effortless and harmonious, but you're here on a quest. And if you think about it more in terms of what is the question you're seeking to answer? What is it, that continual drive within you that you are always being inspired in the direction of answering a particular question? And for me, it was, what is our highest potential? After studying personal development and rising to what I thought was the highest level possible for me, I still knew that wasn't it. I'm grateful for those experiences. I learned so much. I worked with wonderful people. And yet I still knew there was more for my life. And I do think it is that realization, your own self-realization. And while that word we might be more comfortable with, a lot of people can accept that I'm here to self-realize, but what about being here for self-love? Just to experience greater levels of loving and being love and finding the beauty and the joy in the world. And so that's the basis of this work, is that it's not about finding heaven sometime after you leave here. It's about being able to create your own heaven on earth in your own life and bringing heaven to earth in the way that you live, in the way that you treat others, in the way that you show up. And I think at this time where we're at is this deep desire for freedom, the freedom to be who we really are. And we tend to identify as children, we start learning that I'm me and you're you, so you're Reuben and I'm Sarah, and if you have my toy, then that's mine. And if it is mine, then if I lose it, it's no longer mine, and all of a sudden I'm not happy or peaceful or joyful. Where when you really understand your connection to all that is and who you really are, there's no longer this grasping on. There's no need to have to own everything and control everything. You can live in that natural state or flow, and in that so much more opens up to you. I was very much in a state of doing all the time, making it happen. And that's really what I learned, is if you take massive action and you work really hard and you do and you push and you make it happen, all that effort, that you'll achieve your goal. But for the most part, anytime we get anything, when manifest or create anything, the energy that we put into it is often the energy that will result in the manifestation of that. So it'll just be more of the same. where if you create from a place of pure love and joy and peace within you and inspiration, it's a very different feeling.
Absolutely.
I do think it's important in that there's so much great wisdom out there. You have amazing channels that are part of your show and
Yeah.
that you've spoken to, and I think always the personality of the channel is part of the work. And so to me, the people that are drawn to this work are really wanting to live a grounded, balanced life. I at this point in time in my work and in my channeling, it's about how to create the best possible life here. So we can use these big galactic words or spiritual terms, but how do you really ground that in your life experience? To me, it's about that level of balance. And while I love exploring all the different dimensions that are available to us, it's about being able to really embody all of that here and now. So it's very grounded, it's very balanced, and I would say almost practical spirituality for living an enlightened life. And that typically means people that are in leadership positions, people that are doing great things in the world and wanting to make an impact, like yourself and your team, entrepreneurs, corporate professionals, political leaders, people in education, people in even some forms of activist work, trying to do good for the planet, for the animals, for the land, for the water, for the environment, right? So I find that the people that come to me really find themselves as way showers in the world, people that are here using their life as an example of a better way, that you, in the space of freedom, there is no suffering. There is no stress, there is no worry, and we can lead from that place. And not, there's an evolution, I think, of that word leadership that still implies some level, I think, of separation, but just realizing that in your everyday life, you, by the way you live and by your very being, you can show others that a better way is possible. Being
the change you want to see in others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, to quote some other, be the change you want to see in the world, but, the greatest opportunity is to start right where you are. And I think one of the things I see so often is people have big dreams and big goals and big ideas, which is also often why they're attracted to me, because that's who I am too. And I love to think big, and the council gives us the grandest perspective of what's possible for us, really. And all of that is great. And don't miss the opportunity you have every single day to look someone in the eye and to smile at them and change their entire day and maybe their entire life. When people come to me and they say, I want to write a book, or I want to create a community, or I want to do a film or start an organization, all of it's wonderful. But don't create such a huge gap from where you are to where you want to be.
Right, you'll never get started on it.
You'll never get there. You'll never get there. Find some way in this day to make a difference. And for most people, that means really allowing themselves to show up and be all that they are. If you're still afraid that your light is just too bright, or that people are going to reject you, we talk about fear commonly, but the general term of fear doesn't really get to the root of what's going on. And this is not about going into the past stories. It's not about going back and figuring out who wronged you and who didn't give you the right information all the way along the lines. But it is about understanding, what is keeping you stuck, and allowing that to come to the light. And that sometimes is the most difficult part, is having the courage to see how your life is showing up exactly in alignment to what you believe. It never fails. So when you can allow yourself to see, oh, I have a fear of rejection, and that's what it was for me in relation to doing this channeling work, is I have so many wonderful family members and friends that are very conservative and still in the Christian faith, and I love them dearly, and I my fear in really coming out and being all that I am was the fear of rejection, losing the love of the people that I care most deeply about. And as the council would say, it's always a mirror. It's always whatever's going on out there is just a reflection of what's going on within here. So if you want to live in a more peaceful, joyful, loving world around you, you must first create it within you. And whatever is being triggered by someone around you or in your interaction with another is always showing you something within you. That's not to say that something's wrong with you.
Right.
Or you don't speak your truth or have boundaries and say what is and isn't okay for you and how others treat you. But the fear that I was holding myself in was fear of rejection. And when I got to the place within myself where I really accepted myself for who I am, even though part of that meant admitting to myself and others that I channel a group of non-physical beings that is the most loving, incredible experience that anyone could ever have, or certainly that I've ever had. But when I decided within inside of myself that I accepted myself and I didn't need anyone else to understand in order for me to be okay with who I am. And in almost in the moment that I accepted that and I didn't need anyone else to understand, I had a very dear family member who I love say to me, I don't really understand what you're doing. I don't understand this whole channeling thing.
Right.
And this person, had no concept of spirituality outside of the church. And that's just where they are in their path. Doesn't mean right or wrong. Doesn't mean we're farther along or better, just in a different space. And I said, that's okay. It's okay if you don't understand. It's okay.
What was their answer to that?
It was just peace. It was like, yeah, and we both agreed we're just always going to love each other no matter what. And, I kind of jokingly said, you didn't understand when I did in the corporate world either. You didn't necessarily understand IT infrastructure consulting either. That's okay. But the love is always there. And I think that that's sometimes when our work becomes our life and our passion, and people ask what we do and they're trying to understand. When we're doing something that we consider unique or on the edge, sort of say, we expect everybody to understand or get it, and it's okay if they don't. It's okay if they don't. There are the deer. This is like one of the greatest joys of my whole day. On a daily basis.
And they're there all the time?
Yeah, there's one right there.
One, two. There's like 6 of them in there. There's a buck.
Awesome.
There's a big buck in there, and he's been driving them nuts because clearly it's mating season or something.
And he's just, this is their hangout.
Yeah.
They're here every day.
Yeah.
Wow.
How close have you gotten to them?
Oh, they'll come, like I have a picture of them standing out. I walk this pretty much every day. And, 10 feet away from me when I had Kona.
Wow.
But I love it. Oh my gosh, it just makes me so happy.
What about your parents and family? How did they react to all this?
Well, so that's the interesting piece. I don't think it's any accident that early on in my childhood, my aunt, who in my entire family was Christian, and some were more devout than others. Some were a little more open-minded and entrepreneurial. And so my aunt had had a car accident, and while she was recovering from her car accident, had seen something on a TV program about soulmates, and went to do this thing on soulmates and just opened her whole life up to spirituality and enlightenment. And she said she just knew when she heard the wisdom that it was truth. And so she started following channelers back 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
Do you know which ones?
So a channel by the name of Mafu, and
okay.
more commonly known channel still today by the name of Ramtha,
Oh, yeah.
back many years ago, which I know
Ramtha
you're familiar with.
very well. Yep.
And so we ended up living with my aunt at one point in my childhood, and she shared these videos specifically of Mafu with me. And the first time I ever saw it, heard it, I just felt like I was home. I just felt the deeper truth that we are more than these bodies, that we are far more capable than we have ever been told or ever learned to be in this life. So we are more than just these bodies. There's so much more to our experience than what we are taught to believe, and that there's so much more possible for us, and that we have this intelligence and this awareness that is always available to us and always guiding us and is there so we don't lose our way in this dimension of density in form. And that's not a bad thing. The word density or lower densities, I don't mean that disparagingly in any way.
Sure.
We're here in form, and we're perceiving in this body. We're perceiving through our senses. And that's what we tend to think is real. When we begin to move beyond our physical senses and we perceive from a grander awareness or an extra dimensional awareness, our life opens up in incredible ways. And that was the basic understanding of what some of these teachings were, in addition to past lives and other forms of intelligence and all these different things. But I just knew that that was truth.
And how old were you when you were hearing this?
I was about 7 years old at the time.
And you could grasp back those concepts back
I could
then?
feel the love. I could feel the love for this being that I was watching. And it was a woman who channeled a masculine energy by the name of Mafu. And yet I saw a masculine energy. I didn't see the woman. I saw this energy. And so my aunt had many books on spirituality, and I started reading them very young, 8, 9, 10, and I would talk to her for hours, and she would share this wisdom that she was learning and all these incredible experiences she was having. And a lot of them were based on past life things that she was tuning into. And so I was very open to that, and I knew it was truth very young. When I had
kind of the opposite when I was in experiencing Ramp. I was in junior high school, so I was a little bit older, but I was cringing.
Really?
I remember telling my mom, "This is the craziest thing. Don't include me in any of this stuff."
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I did the opposite.
Look
Here
at
I
you
am.
now.
I know. I'm like, aren't you proud of me, Mom? Look at this.
Look at me now. Yeah,
I'm doing
great.
shows on Channel 8. It's great.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. She's
Who
like,
would've
you've come a long way, Ruben.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
See, we always find our way back
We
to
do.
the truth.
Yes, we do.
No matter where we journey out to, we always find our way back to the truth. So along those lines, I probably was about 10 when I excitedly went to tell some other members of my Christian family all this amazing, incredible wisdom that I had learned from this
From your
being
aunt.
and my aunt, and
hanging
from
out with
this
your aunt, yeah.
entity, named Mafu. And I remember it very well, that the response was, if you believe that, you're going to go to hell, and so is Sunny. And I
Sonny's
remember
your aunt,
my
your
aunt.
Okay.
In that moment, I remember just shutting it all off. I remember just like I see that little girl and the entire light of her being just going off.
Wow.
And I remember that feeling like, oh, this is not safe
Right.
And so I continued to talk with my aunt. I continued to listen to her.
Oh,
I
that's cool.
continued to watch and listen to the videos
Yeah,
of Mafu and read the books, but I just didn't really talk about it.
Sure.
And in my teenage years, I actually couldn't even use the word God.
Okay.
I felt so hurt and judged by what I thought was the teachings of Christianity.
Right.
That I wouldn't even use the word God, and yet I knew I was still very spiritual. I was living in Montana. I loved nature. I loved life. I knew there was more. I just was so confused at that point.
Right.
and it felt a little unsafe. And so when I was 21, my brother was killed in a car accident. And my aunt and I happened to be in the same place in Seattle, flying up to Alaska. And so my very spiritual aunt and I flew up together to my brother's funeral. And we were in the airplane talking, and we were happy. We were laughing, we were telling stories. We knew that it wasn't really an accident. We weren't mad at anyone.
Right.
We weren't blaming. We were really in this wonderful state. And we got off the airplane, and everyone was so ticked off about how peaceful and fun and happy we were about it, because we were supposed to be upset. He has died, something's gone wrong.
Right.
You know, he was robbed of his life. And another moment where you're wondering what the heck is going on here, and how did this get so out of whack? And when I walked into my brother's viewing, it was just our family, and it was a very cold day in Alaska. And you know those chairs in a high school auditorium, the like metal folding chairs, that's what was set up there, and it was heavy. I could feel the heaviness of the grief and the sorrow in everyone that was there. And I walked up to my brother's body and I touched it, and it's the first time I'd seen a dead body. I was shocked at how cold it was. And so I went and sat down, and after a couple of minutes, not really sure how long I sat there, this feeling went through my body, and it started at the top of my head. And I can only describe it to you, Ruben, as liquid love. And it just started at the top of my head, went all the way through my body, and I was just in a state of pure bliss and peace, this eternal sort of peace feeling. And I could feel it all around me. And I heard my brother say, as clear as day, over my right shoulder, his body was on the left side of me, "I'm still here, I'm just not in there."
Right.
And I said back, "Well, where are you?" in my head. And he said, "I'm just as here as I ever was. I just left the density of the body. And no one goes anywhere. I'm just at such a frequency your eyes can't perceive me. But I'm not gone, and I'm always here." So that went on for many years. And I never told anyone except my aunt, because I, again, was afraid of the rejection of others who wouldn't have really liked that I was in a peaceful state about his passing.
Right.
And he explained there are no accidents. He explained that he came in and was here to love. And so that was really my first conscious awareness of communicating with something beyond our normal senses, a extra dimensional perception.
And what did your aunt say when?
Oh, she was
happy, excited,
and had some experiences with him. Had some experiences with him herself, and very much understood that. So, however, I just wanted to go back to my normal, whatever that is, life, and I didn't say much about it except to my aunt. I went back to my corporate world of achieving goals and being successful and buying the house and all the stuff, right? And then in a few years later, I started having these experiences in the middle of the night where I would wake up and I had to write. It almost said, grab a pen. And I would grab a pen and I would write, or I'd turn my phone on and I would write in the notes section of my phone later on. And it was this energy that came through, and I was just translating it. I was literally just writing it down as fast as I was hearing it. And I would read it the next morning, and it was the most incredible wisdom beyond anything I had ever experienced before. And it was the answers to all the questions that I had that no one else could answer for me yet at that point. And like what is our highest potential and what really is going on and why do bad things happen, and these incredible answers came through. And I realized at that point that something else, some other awareness was speaking through me. It wasn't coming from my head.
Right. What time of the night was this?
It was almost always like 1, 2, 3 a.m. Most of the time it was like 3 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Yep.
And then I would just go right back to sleep.
Wow.
And I was never tired the next morning. I'm a good sleeper. I'm
Yeah.
a good 8, 10, 12 hours of sleep if I can get it person sometimes. But I would wake up and felt like I had a complete night's sleep.
And this was during your corporate
Yes.
world too,
Yes.
so you had to perform and do your thing, right?
It was probably during one of the most stressful times of
wow.
my corporate life. And I think that is sort of the resistance of when you're in such resistance and stress, the second you just let go a little bit, you feel who you really are again. But you don't have to get to that level to feel into those higher states of awareness and vibration that are here, or getting into a frequency where you allow more of your multidimensional self to be known by you. And so a series of events happened after that, which felt like coming to the end of myself. It felt like the life that I had spent so long building was sort of crumbling before my eyes, and yet some part of me was really calm and peaceful about it. And well, it felt like everything was falling apart. There was just this deeper awareness, and certainly the wisdom that was coming through in the channeled writing was that it is going to fall into place if you just trust and allow and be in a state of grace. You know, there's a lot less doing needed here and all of those things. But when you have learned to work hard and effort and all of that to go to this state of being and allowing, and I get this often, it's like, what does that even mean? How do you do that? So again, you're back in the how do I do it stage.
You're still trying how to do.
You're still trying to do it.
How you do the non-doing, right?
Exactly. I've been working really hard at allowing, is what I hear oftentimes.
Yeah.
So after a series of changes in my life that I knew were not aligned to my truth, I just didn't know what was. And I didn't want to hurt anyone. I was in a marriage at that time. I was in a business at that time. I was living in a different state at that time with wonderful friends, but I also knew there was more, and I knew there were greater experiences that I wanted to have in my life. And so I made a lot of changes. I was moving in a particular direction. I didn't know where I was going. And the council would say, what brings you joy? People want to be free. They want to be free to be who they are and do what they want to do. And they have all of these ideas and ways that they like to create and passions that they want to pursue, but they feel that they're stuck and unable to do those things, and they don't have the freedom to do them.
Right.
And yet what the council will often ask is, what brings you joy? And people almost always say the same things. Nature, animals, their loved ones, music, dancing, cooking, creating, reading, the ocean, the mountains, hiking. So people will say travel sometimes, but for the most part, the things that bring you joy, we could all do today. We just don't think we have the freedom to do them, so we don't. And that's how we hold ourselves stuck. So the first step is really get clear on what things bring you joy and start doing those things.
Right.
For me, it was nature, it was the ocean, it was having conversations like this with people.
Right.
It was spirituality and consciousness, and that's what drove me. Being with other people and feeling that deep sense of connection. And so I just began to move in that direction, whatever that meant. And we can never logically figure out the path. It's not designed that way, and the council would say, divine orchestration is always out ahead of you, orchestrating things on your behalf. If you will just follow your joy, if you will just do the things that really bring you into the moment, it'll all come to you. And in that state of being, all things are done through you. And so I just moved in that direction each time. And I took some windy roads, a little off path here and there, but
Sure.
ultimately it all came back to this experience of channeling the council. And it started with a meditation, a visualization kind of hypnosis practice of getting in touch with your higher self. So at that time I had started meditating. And
Up until then, you hadn't really done meditating? Or?
I didn't have time, Ruben. I was so
Yes,
busy
I
doing.
know.
I didn't have time
the same
to
boat.
do,
Yep.
that. And so I started meditating, but not with any type of real structure. Just taking a few minutes each day to notice that I was breathing, that I was peaceful. And I think running can be a meditation, swimming can be a meditation, walking can be a meditation. Drawing or writing can be a meditation. It doesn't always have to be a close eyes,
Right.
particular position that you put your hands and
Sure.
feet. Whatever it is that just allows you to open up a little bit.
Right.
And so the first time the council came through, as I told you, it sounded like a Russian man.
Right.
They
this was
came
in a
in
meditative
and it
state,
was
or?
Yeah, it was a bit of a
Okay.
hypnosis state that was being recorded, and the basis of that hypnosis was to get in touch with your higher self. It was based on the quantum hypnosis healing techniques of Dolores Cannon.
Yeah.
And
done a
so,
few of those.
yeah, wonderful work.
Yep.
And so the question was, do we have permission to talk to Sara's higher self? And so I said yes, and this went on for a little bit, and then all of a sudden this energy just came in, and I felt it go into my body, and it just spoke really, really loud. It didn't pause, it didn't it didn't miss a beat, and it always said we. We are here for this, we love you, we are here guiding you. And at the end of it, it had all been recorded. I realized it was the same energy that was coming through in the writing. And it was just finally time to move into that space and
Give it a voice.
give it a voice.
Very cool.
Yeah, so even after the voice started coming through, I didn't consider myself a channeler. I wasn't trying to channel. I was looking for answers to more so what my soul's purpose was. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do with my life? How do I get this right, sort of thing. And so the content that came through was really based on those things, and even sort of what I would consider as the next evolution of the law of attraction, because a big part of my questions at that time were based on this idea that, hey, I did everything that I was supposed to do here,
Right.
especially by the law of attraction, right? Look out there, what you want, take a picture of it, put it on a vision board, and you can manifest it,
Right.
and then you'll be happy, sort of thing. And a lot of my questions were about that, because I had these dreams and hopes and desires, and yet they didn't really feel aligned with my soul. And I didn't really know what my soul's desires were. And so as I listened back to the information that came through, I really realized that these were the answers I was looking for. And as I began to share this work with other people, or this experience of what was happening just for a couple of people where it was really safe, they wanted to talk to the voice too. And
Right, right.
so I had a few really close friends that started to talk to the council and ask questions. And
And you were able to self-hypnotize yourself in a way, or
yeah,
how did you get
yeah.
into that?
It was a progression for sure. When I first started channeling, I had to lay down on a bed, and my eyes were closed. It had to be really dark, and nobody come in for like 15 minutes. And then when you come in, you turn the voice recorder on, and I'll be in channel hopefully by then.
Right.
As it has progressed, then I was sitting up, then I could turn the recorder on, and now it's a couple of breaths and they're in, and a couple of, and you feel it when they recede. I can feel when they recede, but they don't really go anywhere. And having done this for many years now and done so many sessions and workshops and courses, their energy's never really far away.
Sure.
You know, they're here right now. It's just me and you talking versus me sort of moving my consciousness into a different space to allow that to come through. And so I started sharing the voice with some people that, you know, had questions of their own. And I really saw where it was this incredible wisdom that, you know, we are all love. The truth of who we are is love. That everything really is always working out for you. That life is happening for you, not to you. That you're capable of so much more. And that when you really find peace within you, you will find peace around you. That you're the only one who can hold yourself in either suffering or a state of freedom. And, you know, none of the teachings are really complicated.
Yeah.
They're actually simple. And I think that's why most people have to practice them. You know, the council says there are basically 3 playgrounds where we're learning to master our power. And almost all the questions for a long period of time were based on health. You know, how do I heal this pain or disease in my body, or some sort of imbalance of their body, not feeling their best, wanting health and well-being. The other one was money and finances, wanting more money, either to not having the money to do what they are feeling inspired to do, or wanting to make changes in their lives and feeling like they have all these responsibilities and so they can't do what they want to do until they have more money. And relationships. You know, how to have a better marriage, how to find the one, how to create more connection in their lives. So those are really the 3 places for a very long period of time that I would get questions about: health, finances, and relationships. And I would also put success and purpose in there. What is my purpose? Often and success go kind of hand in hand with some of the money stuff, or aligning all of that. I think now the questions have also evolved towards that bigger picture of what is the highest perspective for us. It's no longer trying to fix a problem. Like, I want to fix my health, I want to fix my relationship, I have to fix my money problem. It's more of realizing that all of those things exist in a dimension of density. So speaking of extra dimensional, right, we have an aspect of us that is in all different sorts of dimensions and consciousness. There's aspects of us in multiple different dimensions of awareness and consciousness. We're most focused here, but even here we have different dimensions of consciousness. It's not a different place. It's a different state of consciousness that is based on where your frequency is. And so if you are in a place where you are feeling that there's lack, there's not enough, you're feeling powerless, you're feeling separate from even the solution to your problem or the answer to your question, or you're in judgment, you are holding yourself in a dimension of consciousness that feels really heavy, really isolating, there's not enough, and it's a struggle. So you can even see this in someone. If someone walks into the room, you can see with your physical senses the state of consciousness they're in. If their shoulders are shrunk down and they just look frazzled and overwhelmed and they've just got this frown on their face, they're in a heavier state of consciousness or awareness. The thoughts that come to us from that place are what exist in that mass conscious collective at that state. So you just get more of the same. And people don't realize they have the opportunity to step into higher states of consciousness, and that when you do that, more and more opens up to you. The greater awareness you have, the greater potential, the greater possibilities. The more you expand your consciousness, the more your life expands, and the more that becomes possible for you. So a lot of the work now, which I think is always and ever evolving,
Right.
is around this understanding of different states of consciousness. And again, I always go back to the question of what does that have to do with my life today, right? So we have been moving through, I think, a majority of people that are on this path to greater awareness. We've been moving through sort of the next state of consciousness, which is the state of sort of transformation, healing, transformation, figuring it out, realizing that no matter what your circumstances are or what conditions you find yourself in, that you can change them. You can use your thoughts, your focus, your energy, your awareness, and create an outcome that is wanted no matter what the current circumstances are. We're opening up to that. We're becoming more aware of that. That's a state of consciousness. It's a higher state of consciousness than that state of separation and lack and heaviness. Again, you and I can be sitting in the same room, and I can be in fear and stress and overwhelmed, trying to figure it all out, feeling separate from all of the answers that I need to have, and how do I figure this out? And you can be sitting there in a state of knowing that wherever I am, that things are going to work out for me.
Right.
So we're not in a different place.
Right.
We're just in a different state of consciousness.
Exactly.
And hierarchically, it's not better. You're not more worthy than someone else because you're in a different state of consciousness. You might be living a much better life. You might be,
Or
might be
more
a lot
relaxed, yeah.
more joyful and
Sure.
relaxed and peaceful, and you might find your relationships to be much more loving and harmonious, but it's not about them doing anything wrong.
Right.
So now we're in this time where I think we are exploring what it's like to access higher dimensions of consciousness and to be able to bring them here and now in this moment, to have that experience of an even greater sense of joy and peace and love in our lives. And in that, we feel that sense of oneness. We are not separate. What grief feels like to you feels the same to me. There's not separation. And we find our connection in love. You know, so evident to me just being in this place. I find joy in the trees. I find joy in the birds. I find joy in the butterfly, and just having people here experiencing this just sacred space. And each day truly is more joyful and more beautiful. And where we are right now, I believe, is this deeper desire to express ourselves more fully. We have expanded our consciousness, we have expanded our awareness, and for most people, they're ready to start living the next chapter of their life. And it's an extraordinary one. And so what keeps us stuck? And I think that's where a lot of people are right now, is there's a lot of information out there. And if you're constantly seeking out there for it, you'll find that people interpret it differently. People are in different stages of how they perceive that wisdom. And there's a real balance of gaining greater awareness and consciousness, and then allowing yourself to really live it and integrate it in your life, never giving your power away to anybody out there. Make sure you feel that alignment. Now, it might mess with your belief system. That's different. That level of feeling a little uncomfortable is different. When you have that little intuition that says, this is right for me, or this isn't right for me, trust that and follow that. But intuition, it's not about, oh, I got this idea a year ago and I'm just going to go with it.
Right.
Intuition is a thing you check in with every day,
Sure.
in every moment, all the time, what feels right now. We are feeling beings. So the truth is going to come to us as a feeling, and being present in the moment, you'll always know by the way that you feel what your next step is. But with all this information out there, sometimes something that we hear really triggers us because we are remembering something. And yet it really messes with our belief system. And that's perfect. It's okay. Let it, because the belief is going to come to the light. And that's what it's intended to do. The difference is when you get triggered by something, this is where all of this work to me really makes a difference in your life. When you become more conscious and aware, when you have more awareness of your own power and the ability to just put some space around yourself, sometimes that extra dimensional part of you is the part of you that can be so present in the moment that you can put some space around yourself and you can literally move beyond that feeling of time and space. That time and space, you're not moving through time and space. Time and space is moving through you, and you can let it flow through you without reacting to it. And when you find yourself triggered by something, either that you hear someone says or in a relationship, it's that ability to hold a compassionate space for yourself as you have the courage to see how this belief has created the circumstances you have in your reality right now and why you're in the circumstance you're in. There's some belief there.
Right.
And people often, I think, want to jump over that stage
Sure.
or skip over that stage.
Nobody wants to take responsibility for the crap they're in.
And yet, it is so liberating. It's
Yeah.
actually hilarious and fascinating. And you get to this point where you're like, oh, wow. I've been doing that for the last 20 years, and it's so perfect because my belief was so strong
Right.
that it had to be my truth, and I had to continue to attract that to me.
Yep.
So when we can find that courage and compassion to see those beliefs and allow them to come to the light, and then you, from your place of being a sovereign being in your power, aligned to that master that you are, you can then choose whether, for some people, and I've seen this happen, they see how a belief has kept them from releasing a disease in their body. The council would say no one would ever intentionally create or manifest disease or pain or suffering or financial devastation. We would never consciously, intentionally create that.
Right.
And so oftentimes we get stuck in shaming ourselves
Sure.
for we think we should have had this figured out, or we think
right.
we should be more powerful.
Especially people who've been studying on the spiritual
Yeah.
path, doing this work for a while, and they
Yeah.
tend to be the hardest
Absolutely.
self-judging.
And shame and guilt are the heaviest of all emotions that we carry, that often is what keeps us in those lower dimensions of consciousness. And so this particular person had this pain, and she really wanted to get rid of this pain, and she did feel a lot of shame for having it and guilt. And she had a situation where a family member came and she couldn't go see the family member because of this pain, and she was really upset about it. And the council said, did you really, really, really want to go? And after she got to the bottom of it, she's like, no, not really. And she said she realized that the pain was the thing that gave her permission to say no. I don't want to do that.
Right.
It was easier to say I can't
Sure.
because I have this pain and I don't
Right.
feel okay.
Right. A permission slip.
And she really
Excuse.
had this epiphany, and it was a beautiful moment that we all got to be a part of in my master's class group, where we saw it. We saw the belief, why it was still there, that the pain gave her permission to not do all these things she felt like she had to do.
Right.
And the council said, do you believe you have the power to say no without it? And she said, no, I'm not ready. And that's okay.
She's being honest.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And then we begin to see the perfection in it all.
Right.
And there's so many examples of this, and I certainly can say in my own life, it's almost a daily basis where I become conscious of something that is a belief I picked up. And you may still choose to agree to play by those rules and carry that belief. But there's something very empowering and liberating about being able to see it. And that, I do believe, takes compassion, a great amount of compassion for yourself. And not going into self-judgment, not going into shame and blame and feeling guilty, and allowing that to come to the light so that it can be something that you change if you choose to do, or rebalance if you choose to do that. I think an important thing I would say is when you're on this path to really discovering who you are, or better said, remembering who you really are, everything shows up along the way, meaning people, resources, connections, opportunities. But I would not be sitting here today without the people on my path that showed up and guided me to the next step, or walked with me to the next town, right? We think of this journey, and some of those people are still in my life, and some of those people came into my life for a time. And I've also seen that with my journey, and people that I help them to a particular step, and then they move forth from there. But when we really know how guided we are from all sides, that divine orchestration is always out ahead of us, orchestrating things on our behalf, which means putting the right people in our path, putting the right opportunities in our path, putting the resources there, so we always have everything we need and more.
Well, I look forward to speaking to the council tomorrow.
Yes,
and how do people find you? Your website?
SaraLandon.com, SaraLandon.
Perfect.
Thank
Easy enough.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, Sarah. This has
Thank
been
you.
awesome.
It's been
Can't wait till
wonderful
tomorrow.
meeting you. Yes, me too. Thank you.
All right. Hugs.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So good. When you are in a state of pure love, your well-being and abundance is assured. You have everything you need and more. Everything works out. You're in a state of allowing, or in a state of grace, which is being open to receive in the moment. We are feeling beings, so the truth is going to come to us as a feeling, and being present in the moment. You'll always know by the way that you feel what your next step is. I think we're here to realize that greater master within you, and then allow your life to be everything you intended it to be, which is a grand adventure. It's a grand adventure. And where do you go from here? To the next grand adventure.
Right.
And what are we going to do tomorrow? We're going to have the next grand adventure. Where we are right now, I believe, is this deeper desire to express. A deep desire for freedom. The freedom to be who we really are.